What is going on, Pacer Nation? Welcome back to your go-to Pacers podcast, setting the pace. We are winners, but the Pacers are not, as they lose 4 in a row, Facci, to the Los Angeles Clippers, a game that it felt like it was going to be a loss when you saw it scheduled with who they were playing, who wasn't going to be available. But what were your overall thoughts on the game, Facci?
Well, first, I want to say it made me feel good for you to call me a winner because there hasn't been much to celebrate lately, so I appreciate that.
You
But
weren't in the building tonight, so it wasn't your
I,
fault.
it was not my fault, so I feel good that I'm innocent. But as it relates to the Pacers, this was a tough one to not only get up for, as a fan, because you see who's out of the lineup and you go, oh man, I mean there's no bigs tonight, no Jalen Smith, no Turner. There's the G League Winter Showcase, which a lot of people weren't even paying attention to. So now you're saying like on the night that Jarris Walker would have gotten a lot of playing time, maybe even Oscar Tshiebwe, they're not available. And then Tyrese Haliburton, he's not 100%, but you're putting him back out there, and then you got a hot Clippers team. So I didn't feel great about it going into the game. I felt pretty good after the first quarter, but he hits a nice shot, gets us a little bit of momentum in the lead. That was it. After the first quarter, this game was downhill.
Yeah, I mean, 38-37 at the end of the first. Bruce Brown, Isaiah Jackson really got things started off well for the Pacers, had over 20 points together, I think, in that first quarter. Isaiah Jackson, 11 points, was the most points he scored in a quarter in his career. And he looked like, okay, this is going to be a really good matchup for him. And then, just to kind of touch on the big points here for me, I thought Ben Mathurin played awesome in this game. Had 34 points, was a career high for him. So that's a new career high for Ben Mathurin. The previous one was 32 against the Brooklyn Nets. So now he's got 34 in a blowout loss, a 24 point loss to the Clippers, 151 to 127. I feel bad for Ben because I felt like he was one of the only guys that kind of showed up to play in this game. And in addition to that, I mean, Tyrese Haliburton, let's just call it what it is, Facci. Worst game of the season for him. It was atrocious effort from him on both ends of the floor. Just really careless with the basketball. And that's not like Tyrese. That was very uncharacteristic of him. And, we expect a lot from Tyrese every single game. But I think at this point, you know, maybe this season has just been long because of the in-season tournament run and all that. Not trying to make excuses, but he just did not look like himself tonight.
No, he didn't. And you're right. We do expect a lot out of Tyrese because he's blessed us with these incredible games. But you saw early on, it was like something ain't right with Tyrese. And at one point, he had 0 points, 3 assists, and 3 turnovers. I mean, we remember a time when the in-season tournament where Tyrese had 28 assists to 0 turnovers and was just being aggressive. But the first quarter, he goes scoreless. Second quarter, he had 2 points. So he had 2 points at halftime on 1 of 5 shooting. And you knew, man, I just don't know. It doesn't really look like Tyrese has it. Comes out aggressive, hits the first shot right in the third. And then you could just tell it was like, all right, you know what? It's just not his night. Overall, I felt like looking back, if this looked like a scheduled loss, it might have just been better to just rest him overall and have him a bit healthier going in to that, game against the Hornets where you feel it's a winnable game. He's healthy. I just feel like this was not a great game to trot him out there. Maybe it's after seeing that he wasn't healthy, but he did not look like himself. And to your point, I do think it was the worst game he's played this season.
Yeah, I mean, there was just passes that he made. Like I was just kind of baffled by some of them, and I don't know. He just wasn't shooting the ball well. And I know that the Clippers do have some length with Paul and Kawhi, and they were doing a good job of trying to make it a little bit difficult for him. But even then, like he just did not look like himself. And the fact that he didn't score but 2 points in the first half, and I think the points came with like 2 minutes and 17 seconds left is when he scored his first bucket. The Pacers were right in that game, for a majority of it without Tyrese being himself. So, they were hanging in there okay. And then everyone kind of thought, okay, maybe Tyrese is going to have a third quarter takeover, and he did not. So it's tough because, you put a lot of pressure on Tyrese, and we can talk about that. But I'm not even worried about the offense. I just think the defense has got to get better from him. I mean, there's only so much he can do as a defender because he is smaller in frame, but he is just he's just so lackadaisical defensively. And he'd rather, to me, I've recently noticed that, unless he's playing off ball, if he's involved in any of the actions on ball, they're going to drive right through him and get right to the basket whenever they want. Now, they're going to do that against a lot of other players on this team too, but they do it with they do it with much more ease against Tyrese than anybody else on the roster, because Tyrese just doesn't put up a fight defensively like he should. And it makes me mad when you go back and him kind of getting annoyed about the defense and stuff like that. In the in-season tournament, he was like, everybody thinks they're a genius because I say we don't play defense. Well, it's like, yeah, you got to be a lot better defensively. It's like nobody's saying we're a genius by saying it. We're just calling out the facts. And, you as a leader, in my opinion, have to step up. Other guys, they need to build a better roster around you defensively. I'll give you that. But you're the leader of this team, and you have got to step up defensively and at least give some more effort to try to stop guys from getting to the basket.
I'm 100% with you because he said he wanted to lead by example. The leader of this team needs to lead by example. And I'm not saying we need Tyrese taking charges because, look, we don't want to get him hurt. It means a lot to this team that you don't want to risk him on saving 2 points. But I just feel like I've been getting fired up for a Neesmith charge the way that other teams are getting fired up about dunks because it took a charge. Oh, yes, like a stop. That's what we needed. For Haliburton, I'm watching the game with my wife, and she's like, he's got to put some muscle on. I'm like, get him, babe. Tell him. But it's just like, we need to see something. You need to see growth as a defender. Otherwise, you're going to continue to be targeted. I mean, the
Yeah.
Clippers got everything they wanted. They got everything, and they blew this game open. I mean, look, I don't want to say, oh, they scored 40 in the second. They scored 37 in the first. So it's just like they scored 37. Actually, they scored a minimum of 37 points in every quarter tonight. So they didn't have a bad quarter. And overall in the game, let's call it like it is. If we want to talk about defensive issues, the Clippers shot 57% in
Yeah.
this game. They went 19 of 38 for three. That's 50%. 19 made threes on 50% shooting. You're not beating anybody.
And how many of them Pacers make?
12 of 33. And, 36%. I know that wouldn't sound that bad, but it's like 12 of 33. Come on. The Pacers team, they're far too reliant on threes. They need more than 12. And they got crushed on the glass. They got out-rebounded by 12. Across the board, you knew it was going to be bad. You're limited on bigs, but you didn't defend the perimeter at all tonight. And the Clippers' big three, I mean, I'm not going to call it a big four because Norman Powell's definitely not in that category, but, you had James Harden with 35 points on 12 of 16 shooting. At one point, he hit a three. He's on the floor. He's doing a snowflake, just like on the
Snow
ground.
angel,
Just
snow
like
angel.
a snow angel. Yeah, you get it. A snow angel. It's like they were making an embarrassment of us. And it's just Kawhi Leonard, 28 points on 12 of 18 shooting. Paul George, 27 points on 9 of 21 shooting. It just felt like Zubac. I mean, 7 of 10 shooting, 18 points. Norman Powell, 19 points. It's like they had 5 players that just absolutely went off and were extremely efficient. And the Pacers they didn't have an answer defensively at all. And I just think tonight was one of those nights that no matter how big of a fan you are, it was tough to watch. It really was.
Yeah, I mean, Kawhi Leonard was 5 for 5 in the first quarter, Facci. And it was like Bruce Brown and Buddy Hield were guarding him. And it was like every time he got the ball, he would go to the mid range. He'd almost post him up and then shoot a mid range fadeaway. And I'll be honest, I mean, the guys were there. They were trying to do what they could. But it's like if he even caught the ball at the top of the key, he would drive, get to the spot he wanted to, spin back to the middle, hit the fadeaway jumper. And what were the Pacers defense doing? They were standing right there with a hand in his face, but because they're 5 inches shorter, to no avail. And that's the problem when you don't have the right type of players out there to really defend that. Paul George was 5 of 11 in the first quarter. He had 13 points, led the way for them, but it was not a great efficient shooting. And then you go into the second quarter, Kawhi picks up right where he left off, 3 of 4. So now he's looking at 8 of 9 heading into the half. You got James Harden starting to heat up. He has 4 of 6 for 12 points, but then James Harden just goes off in that third quarter, Facci. I mean, I could not believe, was it third or fourth quarter that he went off? Maybe it was the fourth quarter. Because I'm trying to.
I feel
Fourth
like
quarter is
it's
when he went
probably
off. 5 of 6. I've got my stats up here wrong. Sorry, excuse me. 7 of 8 in the fourth quarter in 5 minutes and 51 seconds for James Harden.
I
Just
mean, at that
unbelievable.
point, he couldn't
21
miss. He
points.
couldn't miss. It was getting ridiculous, and that's why he's doing a snow angel and laughing. And the Clippers, they're dancing on the sideline, like truly, I mean, dancing. And it was like that's when you know they're just like, we are killing this team. So I think the Pacers are getting some of the best efforts from opposing teams. This is what happens when I don't want to say when you've arrived, but
No.
the Clippers didn't overlook the Pacers by any means. And I know I didn't get to comment on it before, but yeah, shout out to Ben Mathurin, 34 points to career high. Great to see. But then it also kind of reminded me of last year where it's like Mathurin's eating, but the team's not winning. And it's like in the beginning of the year, we were saying, well, you know what? When the Pacers are winning, there might not be that opportunity for him to score 20 to 30 points. Maybe it is a little lower, 15 to 20. On a night like tonight where he did have 34, it's like, the Pacers weren't in this game. But, he did what he could to be in this game, keep the Pacers, do whatever he could. Good. But a couple things that you touched on before. Isaiah Jackson had 11 points in the first quarter, finishes the game at 15. I mean, he had such a hot start. It was awesome. I don't know where he went, just kind of faded away. It wasn't foul trouble. He actually only had one foul in this game. That's
Yeah.
surprising. But then a couple guys you mentioned before, Bruce Brown, 9 points in the first quarter, like you said, finished the game with 11. How does that happen between the two players that combined for 20 in the first? Actually finished the game with 6 more points. So I felt like they really disappeared in this game. And, I felt like there was no one to really step up outside of Benedict Mathurin. And you're not going to win games if you got a one-man show, because all season we've said, who's the number 2 behind Tyrese? Well, if Tyrese doesn't have it going, and let's put it this way, Alex, Tyrese was a minus 37 in this game. That is by far the highest. And look, I'm not gonna rip him like loose leaf paper or anything like that. He wasn't healthy. We know that. I'm sure his knee was probably swollen. He was moving slow. But this was a night where he shouldn't have been out there, and he should have just realized we're probably not going to beat this Clippers team. This is a get right game. Rest some guys, come back, be a little bit more effective, because this Pacers team, they look gassed. They look tired.
Yeah, I mean, Rick Carlisle said tonight was ugly. It's just something that's unacceptable. I don't care how talented they are. We just let them do whatever they wanted to do. And that's kind of what we were talking about.
Fair.
There was just no resistance defensively. Carlisle continues, we haven't had a tape practice, and I can't remember the last time, and we desperately need it. He also notes that T.J. McConnell was a plus 16 and Aaron Nesmith was a 0, like a positive plus minus of 0. Everybody else but James Johnson was in the negative. Said McConnell and Nesmith are setting the example he wants on defense. That's about it. So those are just little quotes I'm reading from Dustin Dopirek here. But then you talk about Tyrese Haliburton, minus 37, just 8 points in the game. That's just not going to fly. I mean, from your superstar player, like minus 37, that's just absurd for a guy that's that level of talent. But he also said, Haliburton said, I've been playing really poor. Anytime you let a team hang 150, you're probably not going to win. With the exception being the lowly Atlanta Hawks, who are whatever. But
Yes.
I wanted to go back to something you did say when you said, oh, I don't know if teams are, not overlooking us anymore. No, teams are circling the Pacers on the calendar because they know our defense sucks. It's got nothing to do.
Point.
It's got nothing to do with the fact that the Pacers made it to the in-season tournament championship. Cool. You know how many people care about that 2 weeks later? Nobody. You know why? Because it doesn't really matter that much. What matters is this team has a defensive problem. And until they get it figured out, teams are going to continue to be like, oh, I can score 64 points on them if all I do is drive straight down the basket. Oh, they're putting Buddy Hield on me on the perimeter. Let me jab step and shoot a 3 over him because nobody's going to be able to guard me. It's like, I get it. It's not just Buddy Hield's fault, but it's like there's a problem with this Pacers roster and the way it's constructed defensively. And while we can get really excited for some of the early season wins they had, it was a pretty easy schedule at home with teams like Utah, teams like San Antonio. You lost to Charlotte, but that's not a tough team. Washington came in here. You beat the Bucks without Dame, and Chris Middleton was on a minutes restriction. We try not to look at that and, discredit the Pacers for how they played. But at the same time, the defense continues to be a problem, and it relies too much on the offense being great every single night. If the offense is mediocre and scores 109 points like they did against Minnesota, you feel like you can never win a game like that. But even against the Clippers, what they score? 127, something like that?
Yep.
127? Yeah.
127.
So that's a good scoring number for the Pacers to get
Oh
at.
yeah. That's what they average.
Yeah, if you can get to 127, you should win those games, but you can't if you're giving up 100 and freaking 50 points. I'm just tired of talking about it. These guys are tired, whatever excuse we want to give them. I'm tired of hearing excuses. You know, maybe Rick Carlisle needs to make an adjustment to his defensive scheme if only McConnell and Neesmith are playing the way he wants them to play on a consistent basis.
I completely agree. When you talk about circling the Pacers as your team, if you're a young single guy trying to impress a girl, bring her to the Pacers game
Yeah.
because you're going to go off. You're going to score 30, 40 points. This is going to be a great impression for you. So I just feel that right now, yeah, I mean, this is like teams are licking their chops. I mean, look at what the Pacers have given up the last few nights. Okay. Last four-game losing streak. 151 points to the Clippers, 127 to Minnesota, 137 to Washington, and 140 to the Milwaukee Bucks. I'm not a mathematician, but if you average that out, they're giving up probably about 135 plus points per game. Which the sad thing is that is like solidly more than what they average on the season. So it's gotten ugly lately, and you got to switch something up because we've talked about this. When the Pacers have given up 140, 150, we like you and I, and I'm sure plenty of other, fans of this team look at this and they're like, we'll respond. This is going to be a wake-up call. We're snoozing. No one's waking up. No one's waking up because these losses are not having the impact of like, oh man, we just let them get anything we want. Because we thought we'd respond after the Bucks loss.
Yeah.
When Giannis dropped 64. We give up, we'll let Washington do whatever they wanted. Minnesota, okay, fine. Chalk it up, I guess. But how many times are we going to say, yeah, chalk it up as a loss before you get to the point where you're like, wow, actually, we really got to get some wins. And the schedule doesn't get that much easier. Charlotte, a team we already lost to. Memphis, a team that I believe is getting John Morant back. We play Orlando, a team that played really well. Houston. There's a lot of tough games out there, and you want to see this team wake up. And right now, I don't know what it is, but they're still dreaming.
No, they definitely are, Facci, and I'm just looking at our field goal percentage over the last 4 games in this losing streak is 47.7% from the field, which is not that great. And then you look at our opponent's field goal percentage is 55.9. So teams are definitely out shooting us, and they're playing much better defense on us. And I mean, even the lowly Washington Wizards, Facci, played better defense than the Pacers, and they still gave up 123 points. It's like I think that it just comes down to mind over matter. Who do you have the will to play defensively? And I think when things are going bad, it's easy to like have that spiral effect happen where everybody, like that downward spiral effect, everyone kind of just gets a little bit emotionally upset with how things are going. And instead of going out there and playing hard and trying to right the ship, they just start pouting and taking bad shots. The body language from Tyrese Haliburton in this game looked like a guy that didn't want to be on the floor. And I think that with him being the leader, if that's how he's going to act, you're going to see other guys act that way too. They were better when he wasn't on the floor tonight, and that's not the case with Tyrese usually. So I'm not going to continue to like beat a dead horse by making the same comments over and over and over again. But I'm to the point right now where it's like you have so many players on this roster that want to get out there and showcase that they can do something. And tonight was a little bit different because they were short, I guess you could say short staffed with guys in the G League. They were shorthanded. That's a good way to put it. I not want to call these guys staff members, but they were shorthanded.
No.
And I just, the fact that Rick Carlisle was trying to get some kind of energy out there by putting James Johnson in as a backup center, like, Obi Toppin had a few nice dunks, but like, what has Obi Toppin done defensively this year? Besides the one game I've praised him for against Jimmy
That was
Butler.
nice. That game, yeah, exactly. That was it. It's all we got this year. It was
he played
like,
okay against the
fun.
76ers. Played okay against them, but aside from that, man, for a 6'9" athletic freak like that, that dude can't guard anybody.
No. Nope. It's tough because yes, the dunks, they're flashy, they're nice. You get one or two of them a game. It's fun, but the Pacers have enough scoring where I would rather see Obi, stop a dunk than get a dunk. So I think at this point, I don't know what else we can do right now to change this overnight. And here's the thing: we're not asking to just become a decent defensive team. You can't be the worst defensive unit in the NBA and have any expectations. And I just feel like tonight was a night that it's just like you wonder what's going to wake the Pacers up. I do like bringing James Johnson back as like, what feels like a coach on the court type of thing. He's always, game. It feels like he's always whispering into someone's ear some sort of direction, but it could only go oh so far. He really can't lead by example on the court. He has his limitations. I believe it's year 16 or so for him. I mean, it's impressive that he's still going. But right now, the Pacers, their growth, it has to come from each and every player stepping it up,
Yeah.
5%. Everyone's got to get a little bit better. And right now, it's like you're wondering what that effort's going to be because with McConnell, Neesmith, good players, bringing it each night. They're not the guys that can set the tone for this. Like you got to see Tyrese doing it. You got to see Miles having, great rim protection, really, D'ing up, bodying up against some of the more elite bigs. Not what you do against, and I know Miles didn't play in this Clippers game, but I'm just saying, like, you need your starters and your top-notch players leading by example compared to the bench that has its limitations.
The best defense this Pacers team has played in the last 4 games is when they took the ball from Giannis after the game.
Yeah, I agree. Yep.
I
I
mean,
mean,
it was a joke that went around on Twitter, but it's the truth. I mean, if you go back and look how they've defended the last 4 games, and then you throw on top of that, did you see how passionate Miles and Buddy got about not giving them the ball and that leaked audio that went out?
definitely. Yep. Yep.
Show some of that passion on the court. If you have more passion about not giving Thanasis or Giannis his game ball back because you're trying to save it for Oscar than you do with how you're playing against the Wizards, I mean, that to me is where I'm just kind of annoyed with. I just want more consistency. It's a long season. I'm not going to overthink it, but it's just little things like that. It's like I just want to see like these guys care. They don't not saying I'm not saying they don't care, but I just want to see them be a little bit more attentive to details because if they can focus on the details of what it takes to win, like it's the small things that win basketball games. It's not you're great players. You're going to make shots. It's going to happen. But if you're not able to work together as a team defensively, you're going to be stuck in the mud and you're going to be climbing an uphill battle that you cannot win. And that's why I don't think this team can win in the playoffs if they play defense like this because they're not good enough defensively that they can turn it off and on. They always have the button off. And they might turn it on every once in a while, but then the batteries just drain right out. So I'm just trying to, find a nice common ground here without killing these guys because they're still above 500, Facci. They're still 13 and 12.
There.
But I think at this point in the season, you can say that this game against Charlotte on Wednesday night at 7 o'clock, it is Star Wars night. It is a must win.
Yeah.
Is it too
If
early?
that's the thing. Look, I get it because we don't want to be calling like each week. This is a must win. If you lose to Charlotte, I'm telling you, this fan base right now has not seen enough to be confident in to say we will bounce back. They will say, same old Pacers, we're
Yeah.
just not ready. They'll start to turn their attention. They'll say, "Oh, look at the Colts. The Colts are playing well." And it's like everything's going to just shift over at that point. Like you want everybody to believe the same way that they believed before this 4-game winning streak. But four-game losing streak. But here's the thing: the Lakers lost. Yes, it didn't count, but it's 5 games now of losing in a row, and I just think that
Well, they
you
beat the
got to wake up.
Pistons.
Okay, yes, they beat the worst team in the league that's lost 22 straight games. We do have that, and I can tell
Thank
you right
God.
now, if they lost that game, the sky would be falling. So that would be really bad. But to your point, like yes, technically it's not a must-win elimination game, But if you want the fan base to believe and show up to games, you got to show us something. And I think that they have to respond against a Charlotte team that already beats you. And that, you know what? Out of teams that ain't playing much defense, that night, LaMelo Ball in that final possession played the best defense of his life. They got a timely stop on Tyrese Haliburton. I want to see the Pacers be able to get a timely stop here and there, because a timely stop was the difference between beating the Bucks when Mathurin stripped Giannis and coming up short in that game.
Well, and you got to remember this too, and I'm not trying to make light of the situation, but Miles Bridges is well rested because he wasn't able to play in Toronto.
That is very true.
And the Pacers didn't see him in the first game. And that's another wing that has had their way with the Pacers over the years. So whether you agree with what he did or not, or you don't have an opinion on it, or you do have an opinion on it, he's going to play in this game. And he is going to be hungry to get out there and kind of make up for what he missed in that game against Toronto on Monday night. So, this is to me, a must win for the Pacers. That they have to win this game. And Memphis is not going to be easy. The game after that, second night of a back-to-back, third game in 4 nights, and Ja Morant's coming back off his suspension Wednesday night, so he'll be, revved up for that one. No pun intended there with the Pacers revving it up thing, but it's a game you can still win though, even if Ja's back. And I think if the Pacers really want to kind of separate themselves and kind of prove, okay, we are a top 6 team in the Eastern Conference, you got to win against Charlotte. You got to beat Memphis, and then come home and take care of business Saturday before Christmas against the Orlando Magic, a team that embarrassed you on your home floor. You better have a bad taste in your mouth from that game and ready to kick some butt. I'm sorry, but this Pacers team needs a fire lit underneath them, and I'm hoping that they figure that out in practice on Tuesday and just kind of get that wake-up call they need after what has been a hellacious week from the Pacers.
It's really shows how much changes in a week. A week ago, woo! Oh man, we were riding high. Life was good. Now all of a sudden, it's like you're at a spot where I never thought I'd say 1 week later, a must win versus Charlotte. Yet here we are, and that is the reality. So Alex, I really do hope that we can get back to it. I have not heard any sort of medical update on Jalen Smith and Andrew Nembhard as to when they could be available again. But I do think that the Pacers need a little bit of life injected into them. I think both of those players is part of the strength of what this team was coming into the season, a team with depth. And I feel that right now we have seen that depth dry up. And Jalen Smith, Andrew Nembhard, 2 players that I very much miss. Hope to see out there soon enough, but there ain't anyone that's going to save this team individually. It's got to be, 1 through 15.
Totally agree, Facci. Well, let's go ahead and wrap this one up as we close out another loss recap podcast. Not been fun the last couple of days, but thank you all so much for joining us and being a part of it. And hopefully you guys understand and agree with some of the stuff we're saying here about the losses. And let us know what you think the Pacers should do to try to fix some of these things and make this thing better. So, Facci, go ahead and let the people know where they can find us at on social media.
Absolutely. So you can find us on Twitter at PacersPod STP. You can find Alex on Twitter at AlexGoldenNBA. I can be found on Twitter at _FACCI. You can find us on Instagram at PacersPod STP. You can find us on Facebook, Set the Pace. You can find us on TikTok, Set the Pace. And Alex, tell them where they can check us out on YouTube.
Ladies and gentlemen, go to youtube.com/Setting the Pace, a Pacers podcast. We can find all of our video content. Make sure you leave us a 5-star rating and review over on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. Please do us a favor and check that out. And tomorrow we have a fun episode in line for you. We've got our Pacers Christmas wish list as well as our Pacers trivia and fan of the week. So you guys are going to really enjoy those 2 segments. And I think that's a fun episode and probably brightens your spirits a little bit more than this one here. And Facci does drop some great comments in that one. Just a little spoiler for you. So be on the lookout for Facci's Mount Rushmore of Christmas songs. But with that being said, Facci, if you're hoping the Pacers in this 4-game losing streak against the Charlotte Hornets on Wednesday night, then hit me with those 3 words.
Let's go, Pacers!